have no idea what this thing is doing. Okay, we're live. Barely. This is coming to you from a barely live studio audience. Is there anybody out there? Please. Please say yes. Please. Okay, it's midnight. Give me some love. Give me some love. Oh, yeah. This new open broadcast software is much better, I think. It seems to be working a lot better. Now, if anybody could talk to me, anybody could speak to me, anybody could just give me some auditory loving here. Let me know I'm, not talking to myself in the dark. So, Ronry. So, Ronry. Well, I managed to get myself in a tight spot again. Paid off a bunch of bills today. Unfortunately, I just looked back and it looks like I overdrafted again. And because general rule of thumb is when your PayPal account says 000, it means you just withdrew more than you actually had. As long as you got a couple of pennies in there, you can go, okay, I didn't overdraft, but yeah, basically what I'm doing is sitting here waiting for the banks to all go, hey, it's time to screw him over again. Let's pass our papers back and forth at the speed of light. Oh boy, I'm getting mad at People's Bank now. Look, I went to so much difficulty just to get to a bank, to open a bank account, a checking account, so I could do, to facilitate some online business. And then I get home and find out that, after all that difficulty, I get home and I find out, oh, whoops, you forgot to put overdraft protection on there. Oopsie doodle. Oh, did we mention that we're going to just start charging you a fee for having less than $500 in your account? And so on and so forth. And, if I want to fix this, I'd basically have to shut down the account and open a whole brand new account all over again. It's basically, it's a problem I can't fix. What can you do? Well, anyway, long story short, I haven't even paid all my bills yet. I have to, but because I decided to pay the trash people, because I'd rather not die in a mountain of filth. I apparently overdrafted, or I'm looking at it and it looks like I might have overdrafted. But, well, basically, I'm shaking the tin cup and saying, if you'd like to make a commission, go to www.rhjunior.com/commissions. If you'd like to buy something that I've already got, www.rhjunior.com/buy, B-U-Y. And I've got like DVDs and stuff that's on sale there. If you just like to make a donation, just drop something in the hat. I've got I've got a PayPal button on my front page, and I've got a Patreon button on my front page. So, you know, help. Anyway, www.rhjunior.com. I ought to make it just make a page to www.rhjunior.com. My ass is broke. www.jail.com. www.homeless.com. www.gonalosemytrailer.com. Well, hello, Cartoon Glutton. Okay, just in case you're wondering, I'm still stuck on this slideshow thing. I just uploaded a new version of OBS, and I'm still figuring out the ins and outs of it. I haven't learned how to make a desktop view yet. I'm going to try and work on some things. I've got a mountain of things. Okay, for those of you who have ordered CDs and DVDs, your orders are on file. The trick is I have to, you know, I have to have enough cash available to go and get these DVDs printed out. I've tried to do them manually, and I'm going to try and do it manually. Okay, well, let me back up and start over again. What I'd like to do is I got the DVDs, and I'd like to just, you know, take them to like Kinko's and have them run off a bunch of copies for me so that I can send them out to y'all and save everybody else a load of heartache and grief. Because when I do them at home, I have two external DVD drives, you know, burners. And the thing of it is, whenever I do it, you know, it's pot luck. It's blind luck whether the DVD will come out, you know, properly, you know, burnt, and, you know, properly cut, or whatever you want to call it, and whether it'll come out usable or whether it will come out at all. Sometimes it finishes the DVD and you get the little red blinky light and you're like, oh, come on, get out of there. So that's part of what's slowing me up. Okay, and also the archival DVD. Now, the older archival DVDs, they had a HTML code in them and some JavaScript and stuff that a friend of mine put together for me, so that you could browse it on. You know, just plug it in, you know, stick it in your DVD drive, turn it on, and you could immediately, you know, it would automatically open and you could browse it, you know. But apparently there have been changes in Java or something, and it no longer works correctly. It doesn't even boot up properly. And I lack the acumen to create a new one. Me am cartoonist. Me no do Java. I don't even drink Java. So the archival DVDs are just basically going to be straight up archives. A DVD with files and PNG files, image files on them. But just in case, just to let you know, and once I get them burned, I'm going to give it another shot tomorrow. I'm going to take out these external DVD burners and try to get them to, you know, crank out some DVDs. But what are the fundamental, you know, when my father over the years, when I was a boy, he'd try to start, he used to be a photographer, you know, the kind of guy that takes photographs of people and stuff for, you know, family portrait day. That guy, that was my dad. and he would, and every few years he'd try and start a photography business, and it would last for a while, and then it would just sort of go, you know. But the thing is that one of the things is when you do that sort of thing, part of the cost that comes to printing out the pictures. So, you know, this guy takes the photographs. You know, the guy comes in, takes the photographs. You place the order. He takes most of that money and gives it straight to the film processing people who print out the pictures for him. And my mom never quite, you know, he would put money in the bank, and Mom would, you know, take it back out to pay the bills and stuff. And Dad was like, "We needed that money to do the job," and she's like, "Well, we had bills to pay," and she couldn't quite get that the money was not to spend. And I don't know. I think I'm channeling both of them at the same time, because I get a lot of these bills in. You know, you know, when I do this right now, one of the problems is that the money that comes in goes out almost as fast. And you know, and if I you know, you're sort of over a barrel, because I could say, well, I can't pay you the rent, you know, I can't pay the electric bill this month because I need this money to print out these brochures or DVDs or whatever I'm sending out. And they could go click, and I won't be printing them out anyway. So you know, it's trying to keep it coming as before it goes out. The money almost goes out before it comes in. I know it's you don't want to hear this. You don't want to hear this. This is boring. You don't want to hear about my financial troubles or my money troubles or my business troubles, and lack of business. And I've been face down in it lately. For the past month or so, I just ground up. Just ground up. My legs have been giving me a lot of trouble, for one thing, and just in constant pain sometimes. And it taking care of the problem. Now, when you have lymphedema, when your legs swell, and I mean swell, picture a leg as big around as your waist. That's how bad it gets. And that's how bad it stays. Because in order to drain your legs, you have to lie down. You have to have your feet elevated, and you have to. And when my legs get like this, it takes about 2 weeks of being bedridden. And I mean, literally not getting up for anything, you know, not even getting up to go to the bathroom. That's what it took last time. I had to go into a care center called the Arbors, long-term care center for 2 weeks, and just stayed in one of their hospital beds with my legs wrapped and my feet elevated. And just wait for my legs to shrink down. And it was I can't tell you how happy I was by the end of those 2 weeks, because I had literally lost, you know, just in fluid, I had lost almost 100 pounds. And my legs, I could walk again. I could see my ankles again. You know, I had big saggy bags of flesh on my legs, but I could walk, I could move around again. And then I got home, and you know, the only problem is that the only way to maintain that is to keep your legs wrapped up like a mummy, and to have them and to be prone, you know, on your back at least 1/4 to 1/3 of your waking day. And here I am. I'm sitting up in front of a computer, and I've got so much fluid in my legs. I'm like a weeble. I can tip forward, but I can't tip over. But I'm going to be inquiring about taking another 2-week stay at the Arbors to get my legs back down again. This is pie in the sky dream. I'd love to have me one of those. Crap. If I had enough money to get one of those things, I'd love to get me one of those. You see them. These are for like die-hard crazy gamers who like spend their life savings on an Xbox setup. And they have these desks. They're basically a reclining desk. It's, you sit in it and you can recline with your feet elevated, and screens on suspension. I could probably pull up a picture of one if I could find it. Let's see, Google. Let's see, reclining computer desk. Just Google reclining computer desk, and you'll get a lot of images that give you a general idea. If I could afford something like that, I wouldn't be in the. This is not something for people like me. It's one of those hole in the bucket problems. If you could afford it, you wouldn't need it. You know what I'm saying? Or rather, or rather, when you're in my situation, you need all sorts of things that you can't possibly afford because you're in your situation. These things are like crazy luxury items. Let's see, ErgoQuest 0G reclining computer workstation. Here, let me see if I can give you a video capture device, display capture. Here we go. Whoa. I'm not sure that I did, but there it is. There, you see, it's a desk like that. But if you could, if you're in a position where you can afford to buy something like that, you're in a position where you're not on government health care. Let's put it that way. Well, you could build something like that for yourself, yeah. But if I could build something like that for myself, I wouldn't need that because I'd be, I'm not physically able to build. Is one of the conundrums of life is that all the stuff that would help you and that you need, or that all the things you could get that would help you, you can't afford because you need help. So what are you going to do? But it wouldn't really be hard to make one of these, a reclining desk. It would just require a lot of rebar, I guess, or PVC pipe. But there you have it. You know what I'm saying? Okay, talking about details. These are things you want to talk about. Things you want to talk. Go and call your. There's only 2 of us here, Cartoon Glutton. Go get your friends. Make them watch. Get them in a hammerlock. Drag them to the computer screen. This guy needs audience. Okay. All right. I think I finally figured out how to capture the desktops too. I think I'll work a little bit on the latest. I'm behind by desk. Let's see. I've got April's desktop up in the Patreon page. I need May, June, and now July. No idea what to do for May. Everybody's a cliche. May. There was something that somebody else wanted. There was something somebody wanted. Let me look it up. I put out a list for requests. You know, what would you like for a Patreon desktop? If you're a Patreon pledger that pay, you know, if you pledge $5 or more, you get a free desktop on my website each month. I'm supposed to have a new one up each month. I'm falling behind. So. Show you what I got here. You can see the small images. There's an April desktop, March desktop, February desktop, January desktop. There's only two. I put it out. You know, what kind of desktop art would you like to see? And I only got two answers. One of little bit making Tagger's hormones caramelize, and there you have it right there. And I also wanted, let's see here, Sam giving Quentin a hug. Okay, I can do that. Let's see. Okay, let's see. Darn it, stupid thing. For some reason, if I leave this open too long, if I leave Manga Studio open too long, the controls, the pen controls get garbled or glitched. I have to shut it down, open it up, start it back up again. Some days I feel like my tank's empty. You know, like I run out of gas. Turn off the air conditioner. It's getting a little too chilly in here. It's frustrating. I've got two air conditioners in this place. You know, they're little small room air conditioners. But with the temperatures being where they are and living in a trailer, they're no good at keeping this house cool. I don't have the wiring for anything more powerful. I've griped about this so many times. A trailer, a mobile home is just basically a big roasting oven. It's badly designed. I can't even get somebody to come out haul the trash away. That's frustrating. If you don't prepare for the future, you end up in a situation where every solution is its own problem. I mean, have you ever heard the old song "The Hole in the Bucket"? They did a skit of it on Sesame Street years ago. There's a hole in the bucket, dear Liza, dear Liza. There's a hole in the bucket, dear Liza, a hole. She'd asked him to fetch some water. He says, there's a hole in the bucket, dear Liza, dear Liza. And she says, patch up the hole, dear Henry, patch up the hole, dear Henry, patch it up. And he goes, with what? And she says, with a cork. He says, the cork is too large, too large. She tells him to trim it down with a knife, and he goes the full circle, and he comes back, and in order to do anything, he needs to do something else, which needs something else done, and they're all running, and he can't get anything done because everything else is in the way. And if you don't take care of things when you're young and you're able-bodied, and when they tell you your health is the most important thing you can have, they really don't explain it enough, I don't think. It's not, when now they do these things, where they take kids and, this is what it's like to be old, and they put on glasses that make it hard to see, and they put pebbles in their shoes so it hurts to walk, and so on and so forth. And that gives the kids the idea that it's unpleasant, that it's uncomfortable to be old, but they don't realize how debilitating it is. And it's been an eye-opener for me. I'm only 47. And this condition of mine basically is it's put me in the position of an 80-year-old shut-in. I can't go anywhere. I can't go anywhere. I can't do anything, even for myself. I can just barely get by. But if my house needs repairs, I can't do it. My lawn needs mowed, forget it. I haven't been able to mow my own lawn in 10 years. First I was just overweight, then I was overweight with legs like elephant legs. And I can barely walk up and down the steps to my front door. And suddenly you discover that how helpless you are if you're not physically able. If you don't prepare for the future, is what I'm saying. This is something every old fart on the planet tells every young fart on the planet. Prepare for the future, and they don't. I don't know why does this not get across? Why does this not get across? Why does this message not get across? I think it's more than just, people are young and foolish, It's more than that. It's got to be. Make them spend a week as an old person, as somebody unable to get up their own steps, as unable to do this, and everybody thinks it's like when you lose your power in your house. When you lose your power in your house, everybody thinks that when you lose your power, this is a bummer. It's dark and we can't watch TV. And they don't realize that just how bad it gets, let me put it this way. Most people, their experience with being without electricity is it's an inconvenience. And they know that being without power is a drag. But their experience is that it's just an inconvenience. So I can't wash my hair today. I can't do. But they don't know what it's like, when the power's out and it drags on and on and on. And suddenly all the food in your refrigerator, all the food you spent hundreds of dollars on that's in the fridge is gone bad. And you can't cook anything anyway. And you can't wash yourself, you can't wash your clothes, you can't even call for help if you in the wrong circumstances, because your phone is out and the electricity to your telephone is out, and on and on and on and on. And they don't realize. They haven't internalized it, is what I'm saying. We're fully aware that being old sucks. Excuse me. We're fully aware that being old sucks. We just don't grasp the real reason why. It doesn't just make things hard. We don't realize that it doesn't just make things harder or more uncomfortable or more difficult. It makes them impossible. Oh, we know it'll happen to us. No. That's too easy an answer. We're in the habit of thinking that other people think this way. It won't happen to me. No, they know it'll happen to them. But they don't realize just how, they can't conceptualize just how bad it is. And you realize with one thing, for instance, like I said, like losing your power. Losing your power isn't just one thing. It's a dozen things. Suddenly, a dozen of your options suddenly shut off. I'm trying to think of a better way to put it. We know these things are going to happen, but we can't really comprehend all the tens of thousands of problems that each one little thing changes. I remember they had a Garfield comic strip where they did several days where they were out without power. All you could see was Garfield and John's eyes, and strip after strip, John was like, "Oh well, let's watch some TV." Oh wait, right. Let's listen to the radio instead. Oh right, no batteries either, and I think I'll just read a good book. And he's staying in the dark. Right, and you realize that suddenly with that one thing. Your power being out, your water being out. In the back of your head, you had all these things that you knew you depended on for electricity, and then and you had a list of other options that you would take if the power was out, and then the power goes out, and you realize those other options are gone too. No. Don't be doing that. We don't realize is I'm speaking from a painful place of experience here. I mean, losing your legs, losing the full use of your legs, being unable to walk properly anymore. You find yourself caught in a dozen catch-22s all at the same time. And people don't really. This is one of the things I pointed this out. We design our houses. Look at the typical house. Every house we have these days is built as if we are all going to be the age of 30 forever. It's not that we don't want to. It's not that we, it's not some moral failing on our part, is what I'm saying. It's just that there are some things you can't calculate. Unexpected consequences, unanticipated consequences. You can spend the rest of your life. You know you're going to get old and you're going to have to deal with A, B, C, and D. But you don't realize that. Because you're going to be dealing with A, B, C, and D, that A is going to contribute to F, and B is going to contribute to Z, and B and C is going to be contributing to Q through T. When you live out on your own, and suddenly, I've been living here by myself for most of my life. When I'm out, I've been in it. I got a hell of a biography, but all the years I've lived on my own, I've really lived on my own. If I didn't have a car, I took the bus. But I'm in a place where I don't have a car, and I don't have a bus, and I couldn't even get into either of them if I could. I am in a physical place where it is just this side of physically impossible for me to get into a van or a taxi. I can't fit in. And the so-called medical transportation, basically in this area, my health insurance, they cover medical transportation, several times a year to the hospital or a doctor's office visit, that kind of thing. The problem is they only hire local transportation, and who do they hire? They hire the local taxi company, and the taxi company does not have vehicles that are really built to handle people like me. And I've had to explain that to them. I had to practically beat it into their heads with a tire iron. I mean, back when I had my kidney stones, the circus I went through. I told them, I am over 400 pounds. I have enormously swollen legs. I cannot fit into a car. And they did not listen to a word. It was like, wah, 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 wah. And I go out there, and they send out a guy. This guy was huge. He was like 500-600 pounds sitting in the driver's seat. He is, they were like, well, he drives that car. He can fit into it fine. Yeah. Because the front seat's custom built for him. I can't fit in because I am not just fat. I am deformed. And I tried. I seriously tried. I tried to get into the poor guy's car. I couldn't fit one leg in. And I had to miss another doctor's appointment and reschedule it for a month later. Again. Because these people would not listen to me. Oh, it made me so angry. Still makes me angry. The only people who really have the only people who really have alternatives and options are people who are extremely wealthy. And I'm talking, they've got a solid, stack in the bank. if you have a problem, you can usually spend your way around it. And that, let's not take that as a criticism of rich people. Let's not. Money is a tool, like any other. It can be used or abused. And frankly, if you've got enough money to afford to fix a problem, you're better off using it. I remember hearing a story. What's his name? There is some musician. His mother was an actress. You remember the interracial couple on the Jeffersons? This is an old TV show. The black lady played the wife. The black lady who I'm talking about, she was an actress. She played the wife of a white man, and it turns out she was the wife of a white man in real life. And she went in for the interview, and they said, do you think you have any problems playing? You think you'll have any problems acting? Playing the wife of this white guy? And she's like, let me think it over. Well, anyway, he was right, and he said he came in one day, and he found his mother. She was already a successful actress. She was starring in the Jeffersons. She's seven-figure income. You get the idea. And she was on her hands and he's scrubbing the toilet. He's like, Mom, what are you doing? She's like, and she looked at him, it's my toilet, isn't it? Now, that sounds, good. What a good work ethic. But think about it. Think about it this way. This woman made 7 figures. She is a millionaire. How much is she paid an hour? You calculate it up. You figure up, she's got to be paid several $100s an hour for her time, as an actress. So basically, you're having somebody who is paid several $100s an hour scrubbing a toilet. She's taking one of those precious hours of her life that has already been determined to be worth several $100s and using it for a toilet, using it to do a job that somebody paid $10 an hour would do just as well. You got to think about where you invest your time. If you've got the money to hire somebody to repair your house or to fix your plumbing or to do all that, do it. You're not going to get a cookie for doing everything yourself. There is no gold star, next to your name for he did his own home repairs even when he didn't have to. All you've established is that you think less of your time than you're paid for. But anyway. But getting back on track, as I've complained about this before, is that we build houses, we build our homes as if we are not going to ever be old or sick. The typical house, the typical house is built assuming that you are young, skinny, and able to climb up on the roof like a monkey. Houses are not, if we were a moderately intelligent species, we would design our houses as if we thought an 80 or 100-year-old man was going to live in it. But we don't. We build our so-called retirement homes as if we were going to be bench pressing cars our entire life. course, by the time you're old enough to realize that this is a problem, you're in a position where you can't do anything about it. That's the cruel joke. Now, for those of you who just came in, hello. Hello. Secondly, just so y'all know, I need to make some money. I need to make some money. And I'm taking commissions, and I've got my DVDs for sale. It's going to be well, I can try and get them printed. I'm going to take a time tomorrow and try and burn off these DVDs. But shipping them out is going to be an interesting challenge as well. But I'm still offering the DVDs. Go to www.rhjunior.com/buy to order one of the books or DVDs that I have for sale. Oh, the sign says the archive DVD is updated to 2015. It'll be updated to current. That's an error, but it's up to current. And I also have www.rhjunior.com/commissions. Basically, it boils down to I tried to pay as many bills as I could this month, and I overdrew, and it looks like I overdrew on my bank, and I'm going to be sunk if I don't pull in some income soon. You know, just to keep things balanced at zero. Man, it is humid here. It is so humid. It's been stuck in the mid-90s. And, you know, that doesn't sound like much. But first of all, it's humid. I live near a river. And second of all, it is... you know, like I said, I live in a trailer, which is basically like living inside an easy bake oven. I could cook a chicken on my kitchen counter. Now, let's talk about something else. You know, if you'd like to make a donation, I have donation buttons on my front page, www.rhjunior.com. I've got Patreon, I've got PayPal, I've got... Yeah, I'm shaking the tin cup. But anyway... Okay, yes. Hello, Mr. Ty Tuber. What's my opinion? On what? On loud fireworks? I don't know. I mean, okay, I dig fireworks, but I think those ones, they got, I don't know what they call them, but the ones that do nothing but make a really loud noise, they always struck me as kind of pointless. Like boom, I mean, like you could have just fired a cannon and gotten the same result. Why bother? I didn't really like them when I was a kid. I hated. I actually kind of hated them. To be truthful, because I'd be sitting there, I'd see, and I'd be sitting there waiting for a big sparkly, razzle-dazzly explosion, and then all I get was boom, 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 and I'm like, ah, why for you do that to me? Decisions. So many. I spent most of my life, worried, even afraid that what I was doing, that by trying to be a cartoonist, or by trying to be an artist and a writer and a cartoonist, that I was somehow thwarting the will of God, And I've never gotten a moment's peace about it. I was supposed to be doing something else God had intended for me. Be a preacher or a teacher or a minister or an evangelist or something like that. And you get it from both sides. Everybody has platitudes and euphemisms and all sorts of things, and they don't satisfy one way or the other. A lifetime of doubt and uncertainty is never cured. Of course, looking back over the course of my life, the fact that I've failed to get, to break over that threshold and become professional at it. and, you know, really, really professional and successful at it. You know, and you know, to the point where where I'm not sweating the bills every month and wondering if the IRS is coming for me at the end of the year. Gets old. Get tired of doing anything. Eventually you feel like you're just making a fool of yourself trying to roller skate uphill. Feel like God is just not blessing anything you do. See, where did I put that folder for Patreon desktops? What was the last bit of what? Let's see, it says here okay, let's see here. Alright. Ben Shakar, I miss let's see, what was that last bit? What are you referring to? You're gonna have to clarify. Mr. Ty Tuber, you want some advice on an alternate history of Earth story, that webcomic you're working on? And yes, happy 4th of July. Just wanted to know any advice for when you're trying to build a world. Well, I'll say this much, you can never do too much research. It will amaze you. I keep dragging out this example. When I was first starting on Tales of the Questor, you remember when Quentin and Sam first met? and he basically made her take an agreement to bathe at least once a week. Right? Well, I did a little research, and it's very popular to portray. Nobody bathed back then. They all walked around stinking. No, it's not true. It's not true, actually. In fact, they were very clean. It wasn't until the Renaissance that people started getting on a kick where they thought that bathing would make you sick. It wasn't religion that made people. It's popular. Oh, the Catholic Church told people not to bathe. No. It was actually the intellectuals of the Renaissance who convinced everybody that bathing opened the pores to disease. I learned that in medieval times, most the Celts actually had soap. In fact, they had soft soap. You see, because bar soap is made by adding salt to it, and generally speaking, they had better things to do with salt than make soap. So the soap they used was liquid. Bar soap was a more recent invention when they started producing more salt that they could use it so cheaply. But anyway, I learned a lot of things. First of all, that most households, most of the larger households and such, had bathhouses. In fact, it was a central focal point of much of the civil goings on. The social interaction. People would go there. The men of the castle would go to the bathhouse. Just sit out and soak and shoot the bull and talk business. And the women would go there. Go to the women's everything, and they gossip. And it was very, very. The people back then bathed quite frequently. As much as we do, frankly, and it's just that the perception that everybody walks around in the medieval period filthy is a modern invention. I also learned some very interesting things about how soap was made. Like I said, just learn. Just researching what kind, just because I go, how likely would it be for Quentin to be carrying around a bar of soap? And I got all these answers, and it's very, it's surprising though. It's the little things that make the biggest changes in a world. Now, I've talked about this before. There's the fan fiction, the online novel Worm. I've talked about it in the past. It's basically it's set in a superhero world. Very, very grimdark, very very angsty. But one of the things is that they have these monsters called Endbringers. That they one of them will make an appearance about every 3 months or so. Every 3 or 4 months, one of these monsters, these Endbringers, will make an appearance, and it will attack a major city, or it will attack a city. And the heroes of the world will have to gather together and battle this monster to keep it from destroying the city utterly. And they lose dozens of lives, dozens of heroes' lives, and thousands of civilians every time before the monster is driven off. Now, one of these, and they point out one of these monsters is, the 3 monsters are the Simurgh, which is this, this gigantic woman with dozens of wings growing out of her body. The Behemoth, which is this huge rock monster that burrows under the earth and and releases, volcanic eruptions and deadly radiation. And then there's Leviathan, which is a sea monster, basically. Comes out of the ocean. It has super speed, hydrokinesis. It can control water, and when it arrives, it is heralded by like a dozen tidal waves. Tidal wave after tidal wave after tidal wave will hit hit whatever coastal city it attacks. And but anyway, these make for very dramatic battles, as you can imagine, in the story. But very few writers investigated what the consequences to society would be. Now, one writer, what was his name? Perfect Lionheart. He's for some reason, from what I've heard, he's something of a notorious figure among some groups. Of course, there's always somebody out there who's butthurt about somebody else. So, anyways, and they throw all sorts of crazy accusations. You get the usual picture. But his stories, I've read several of them. They're something of a guilty pleasure. They have certain flaws that stand out pretty big, but the one he did of Worm, his story called "Stepping on Worm," it's unfinished, and I don't know if it ever will be. Basically, it was it's a take that to Worm, and one of the chapters he points out is that several things that most writers hadn't considered, and I've never seen anybody address this. That these huge, vast events that are taking place all over the world have effects on the personal level. One of the things he points out with Leviathan running around, first of all, that has meant a huge drop in international seafaring trade. What does that mean? Among other things, it means that there is a petroleum shortage, because nobody's willing to send super tankers out with a monster roaming around that sinks ships just for shits and giggles. So, and all the nations of the world, they're either scrambling for solutions or transitioning to alternative fuels, but it's still a problem. It's caused a huge scarcity. The price of fuel has gone up. It's caused all sorts of problems, like, industry has slowed down. Shipments, cargo has slowed down. And between the reduction in international shipping and in and it's compounded that having lower fuel reserves has meant that as well as having fewer people willing to ship things internationally, it has meant thousands of things that we take for granted are suddenly no longer available, such as spices. Most of the stuff on your kitchen counter, most of the stuff in your spice rack comes from very exotic locations. The spices, even ordinary black pepper would become very expensive. Things like cinnamon and turmeric and dozens of other spices that every kitchen has on its spice rack would suddenly, quintuple in price, if that little, because they grow in exotic locations where they have to be shipped incredibly long distances. Another thing that changes is that fresh fruit. You can go down to the store and buy yourself some bananas anytime you want now, right? Can't you? You just walk in and get yourself a bag of oranges, bag of bananas. Not in this world, because again, Shipping. The reason that we can have fresh fruit year round is because of shipping. We can from the northern hemisphere to the southern hemisphere, or from one part of the country to the other. If the price of gas suddenly goes up to $20 a gallon, the price of a bag of California oranges is going to get kind of ridiculous too. Yeah, well, the problem with tinkers is that, in that saying, tinkers are, for those who don't know, tinkers in the worm setting are people with the superpower of crazy inventions. The problem is that the inventions they make, well, basically, the most common explanation, some of them don't work unless the tinker is right there handling things. Others, this explanation I like better is that basically picture somebody traveling back in time with a blueprint for a Lamborghini and landing in like the 1700s. Or even the 1800s. Can you imagine them trying to build this thing? Even if they managed to build it, they would have to cobble it together. They would have to make cheap substitutions. They would have to, dozens of the materials that would go into one of these fancy high-priced cars that we have today simply would not exist, or would have to be, given shoddy substitutions. You'd end up with a Lamborghini that looked like it was built by the Little Rascals. Or maybe even by Fred Flintstone. But that's the problem that most of the tinkers in the setting a worm have, is that they have all these incredible inventions they make, they just don't have the resources to build them. And what they manage to cobble together is basically jerry-rigged. And they require intense maintenance. They're expensive to make. So, no, tinkers aren't a magic fix-all solution. Anyway. Yeah, the setting is altered, but he's still, you get past that, you get some interesting stuff. I think the main reason he altered the setting so much is because he didn't want his protagonist to have to deal with Cauldron. The super vast secret conspiracy running around the world, screwing everything up. Just too much of a pain in the butt to deal with right there. I didn't bother. But anyway, getting back to my point is that and he points out, fresh, things that we take for granted in a high international trade world, like fresh fruit. You can walk down and get a banana or an orange any time of the year you want. Fruit would go back to being a seasonal thing and a very local thing. Most of the exotic spices we have, and there would be a hit to medicine too. Chemicals that are a byproduct of the petroleum industry. And he pointed out that sex would start, the sexual revolution would have to sound a strategic retreat. Because, basically, less petroleum to spare means fewer petroleum distillates, like, say, for instance, latex. The cheap, inexpensive, and also the medicines that go into things like spermicides and abortifacients. Suddenly, cheap, inexpensive birth control would be an oxymoron. People would still be stupid. People, you'd still have people, being infidel, unfaithful. People still, frequenting prostitutes and the like. That kind of thing would still be going on because, well, people are stupid. But there would be a big backlash against the sexual revolution because suddenly the apparent dodge would be gone. The cheap escape, the quick and easy fix would be gone. And he goes on, and his story goes on. He points out that the setting. He points out the consequences this setting would actually have. That would trickle down all the way down to individual livelihoods and standards of how people behave. One of the things he speculated was that polygamy would make a comeback. And this is not an unusual theory either. Even for a lot of human history, polygamy is quite common, and for some rather stubborn practical reasons. There's a reason that biblically it was tolerated, because in that society, in a hardship-driven society, finding a spouse, a woman finding a mate that could provide for her and for her offspring, superseded any desire to be, sole proprietor. In fact, there's a passage in the Bible that is actually a prophecy that it's supposed to be a prophecy that times would come that would be so harsh that women would gather together in groups and say it's better for us all to share one man than to be left out on the curb on our own. I'm not going to speak up too loud against polygamy, considering God himself didn't seem to object to it. In fact, there's one passage in the Bible where one of God's prophets was addressing David over Bathsheba. He said, when David basically, for those who don't know the story of David and Bathsheba, David basically saw her one day bathing on the roof of her house and decided that he coveted her, he wanted her. While her husband was away, he went in and had an affair with her, got her pregnant, and then in order to cover his tracks, had the guy move to the front lines where he'd be killed. And God's prophet showed up and said, "Why have you done this? If you wanted more wives, God would have provided them for you." And so, that sort of undermines that whole monogamy only thing. So, what am I going to say? Monogamy, one man and one woman is the ideal, but one man with several wives. There were periods in there were periods in biblical history where it was very common, and God made no objection to it. Not as so much as I can find in my studies. But I'm getting off the beaten path here. But getting back to the point of the question, the original question was, do I have any advice for world building? It's the little details that make the good stuff. You know, it's you can build a world from the ground up or from the top down, however you want to do it. You know, big sweeping changes like having people ride dragons everywhere. But then you have to go back and consider all the little bitty pieces. I'm working on Chapter 20 of Warcrafter right now. It's a bit slow going. Excuse me. I got chunky lungs. I gotta take a minute and step back with the character. He's got to realize, okay, he's got Taylor with him. Taylor and he, but pretty much everybody else on the team, you could say, are questionable. $20 would help motivate me, yes. A Twinkie would help motivate me right now. But I'm losing my train of thought here. What it is, think about it. Okay, he's got the Undersiders on his team. Basically what he has got Taylor, who has been, who has basically been through the gauntlet, and he's got to take. Basically, he's going to be taking a little bit step back and worrying it just a little bit, because he's got Taylor, who's been recently emotionally traumatized. He's got and he has to worry that she'll end up taking her vendetta, taking a vendetta against Sophia, and having that destroy her. She's become a rogue. She's basically become she's been basically given a rather vicious set of skills. And he's going to be worrying about what kind of effect that's going to have on her mentality. And he's also got all these kids, the underdogs, the undersiders rather. They were all criminals, and some of them were outright sociopaths. And he's taken them into his house, made them part of his team, and now he's in his rush to help them. He hasn't considered the possibility that he didn't consider the possibility that these guys might not be too well adjusted. Well, so he's got. For instance, he's got Alec. Alec's backstory: his supervillain name was Regent, and he was the son of a man named Heartbreaker. Heartbreaker is he's a master thinker. He's a villain. He can mind control people and inflict them. He can make them avidly devoted to himself, or he can afflict them with incredible fear, pain, depression, despair. Any feelings he wants them to have, he can make them have it. That's Heartbreaker's power. And Heartbreaker, he basically accumulated a harem of women for himself, by which he has had several children, and Alec was one of them. And Heartbreaker deliberately set out to make him trigger, to become, trigger his powers, basically by tormenting him, afflicting him with waves of terror so powerful they nearly burst his heart. And then when Alec developed his powers, he forced Alec to participate in his crimes. Rape, murder, assassination, theft, you name it. And all of this before the kid was even a teenager, okay? And so this kid is basically, he was burnt out. He's a sociopath. His ability to feel empathy was literally burned out of him. One of the things in the original canon is that he behaves ethically, but only because he thinks he's supposed to. He doesn't, he's not motivated by feelings or emotions of compassion or anything like that. He's loyal to his team because he believes that's, because he thinks, he's supposed to be. Give him credit for having that kind of, an ethic. He's a high functioning sociopath, basically. But in my story, he's just been cured. He's been metamorphosed into another species, and as a consequence, all the damage that was done to his brain by his father's power has been cleared out, rebooted, removed. And so now he's reliving the trauma that he avoided the first time around. He's just basically, he's going through PTSD right now. And Bayleaf, the main character, he's aware enough to realize that just because he's had his emotions given back, his emotional depth given back, doesn't necessarily mean that Alec is going to turn out to be a good kid. He's like, thus far the appearance is that he's reliving all these memories, and he's horrified by the things he did. But what if he eventually decides that he liked it? Emotions are a very, very bad base to build an ethos off of. This is why we're told not to trust our own hearts. Feelings can be swayed. And doing the right thing can often feel wrong, and the wrong thing can feel right. I'll take a sociopath with a rigid ethical code over somebody who is, just overflowing with emotion and compassion and feelings. Because a person who's, highly emotional is going to be easily led right off a cliff. Oh, well, in general, in sci-fi, in superhero stories, there's a lot of different explanations given. In some stories, there are people that use their powers for just ordinary living. For instance, in the comic book series Astro City, they had several issues where a couple of issues where they talked about these people who had all these cool powers but didn't become superheroes. Instead they went into stage work, or or just basically using their powers for more practical purposes. And the whole arc was about this wannabe supervillain who kidnapped a bunch of these non-combatant supers and tried to convince them to become his army o' evil. You know, you're being oppressed, etc., etc. And they said, "Dang it, you messed up our life. We had it fine. Just go." And they beat the crap out of him. He thought they'd be, he thought that the reason that they hadn't become superheroes is because they were weak or because they were cowards. They proceeded to demonstrate just how wrong he was. They didn't become superheroes because they didn't want to be superheroes. In other comics, it's in other superhero series, like for instance, in My Hero Academia. Look, that way, it's a great series. I love it. It's got some it's got some plot issues that irritate me, plot devices. But in that world, 80% of the world's population has some sort of power. It's just that most of them, either don't want to be an actual superhero, or they really can't use their power for anything, involving superheroes. They can't do superheroics very easily. For instance, the main character's mother, she's an ordinary little housewife, but she has the power to levitate small objects. Not exactly world-shaking. You know what I'm saying? So most people, they either use their powers in more practical ways, or they don't really use them at all. And of course, you got the Reed. You're talking about the Reed Richards is useless trope, or a variation of it. Reed Richards is useless. Why not just cut him a check? Why not just cut Lex Luthor a check? That kind of thing. It's been pointed out by several times that there are lots of supervillains. Why aren't they just out there using their super? They invent some weapon that can. They'll do things like invent a weapon that turns steel to gold and use it to rob a bank. It's like, hello, okay. Of course, they generally go back and they give some sort of explanation. Usually, one of these, some of the common explanation is that one, they're nuts. That's a popular one. Two, the technology they've invented has either been, it's got some sort of impracticality to it. It's too expensive to make, or it's too dangerous to use, or so on and so forth. Another one is that sometimes it'll be stolen. Some guy invents a super suit that gives him the power of flight, and then the company he works for confiscates it and mothballs it for some political reason. And then there are settings where it is basically a crime to use your superpowers. I hate those. I mean, basic rule. Don't write a law you can't enforce. It's still a very common. The general idea is that they're trying to justify. The whole story is supposed to be about the superheroes. They really don't want to change the background setting. They don't want to change the world that much. They want it to be familiar to the readers. That was why most superhero comics for years, at the first start, those superheroes were the only superheroes in their world. Then DC and Marvel, they started conglomerating together. They started having team-ups between different superheroes. And that implied that they were all living in the same world. And pretty soon you had the DC universe and the Marvel universe and so on and so forth. Of course, the idea of Superman retiring because all the world's problems are solved. One, there's no way that a man can solve all the world's problems, no matter how smart he thinks he is. In fact, solving many problems will cause others. It's an inevitability. And two, even with all the problems of the world solved, there's still things like traffic accidents, natural disasters, alien invasions, that kind of thing. Even if there were no crime in the world and everybody, stood around singing Kumbaya, Superman would be a busy guy. I remember reading once that one issue of Superman where people, they were interviewing people and they asked different people what they would do if they had Superman's powers, and Jimmy Olsen was going through a celebrity jerk phase, and he said, "Oh man, I would be the biggest star ever." And a scientist from Canada said, "Oh, I would be using his powers to explore the cosmos. I would investigate the deepest oceans, and I would examine stars close up, and I would explore the depths of space, and so on and so forth." And it just goes so is that each person had a different thing that they would do with the same powers. I always thought the idea, one of the things in Worm about the powers shards, making the superheroes and supervillains, making them aggressive and making them seek out conflict. Like, that is stupid. Why bother? Human beings seek out conflict naturally, and when they're not competing or conflicting with each other, they're out there challenging the environment. They're out there challenging the frontier, facing the challenges of nature. I mean, there are people out there that climb up rock faces, 10,000 feet in the air, their life hanging by a thread. Why? Because it's there. Conflict and challenge are natural to human nature. There was no need, the idea that they needed the shards to push them into violence. Do you read a newspaper, Wildbow? Really, it's no. In fact, I'm pretty sure that that they assume that the shards are making people violent. I consider that a human fallacy. We'd be wonderful people if it weren't for these darn shards. If you've ever read Taylor Varga, look it up. It's hilarious, and it's over 100 chapters. It's a long read. Okay, basically, Taylor Hebert, instead of getting her bug powers, she gets the powers of the Varga. She basically can turn into an indestructible super dinosaur. You'll have to read it, but it's great to read. It's a fun read. It's a fun read. And the interesting thing is that she seems to gather others' capes around her. She ends up with Glory Girl and Panacea and the Undersiders and even Uber and Leet end up, they all end up working together, and what it is that the people with the shards, something about Taylor's powers is immensely satisfying to their shards. Just being around her, seeing the things she does, them working, it somehow unlocks something in their shards that makes them incredibly, it makes them incredibly happy to be using their abilities. Well, you have to read it. It's a little hard to explain, but. Basically, Auron, yeah. Taylor Zilla, the Brave and Bold. Well, just look it up. It's on Sufficient Velocity, I believe, but I think it's posted. Just Google it. Taylor Varga, V-A-R-G-A. One of the funnier ones, I've talked about this one before, is what is it called? It Gets Worse. That's what it's called. It Gets Worse. That's the name of the story. Look it up. And basically, Taylor gets luck powers. Basically, anybody who tries to do her or anybody she cares about wrong suddenly experiences ridiculously bad luck. After the lockers, you will laugh so hard you pee your pants. The Empire 88 tries to kidnap her. A giant chunk of blue ice off a passenger jet falls out of the sky and squashes them. The Lung, the Dragon Man, tries to go on a rampage and kill her friends. He ends up tarred and feathered. You have to read it to believe it. and so on. The Slaughterhouse 9 decide to visit Brockton Bay, and let's see. One of them got shot out of the sky accidentally by Uber and Lee. Another one got trapped in one of Uber and Leet's fake Ghostbusters traps, and a third one they lost when the more monstrous member of their team farted and the gas ignited and blew up their van. I'm not kidding you. We're talking pee your pants laughing. One of the most dangerous villains in the setting, Coil, undergoes a radical transformation into an obedience when he nearly gets killed by a rain of anvils. It's just absolutely hysterical. Now, I'm trying to think of other things to talk about. Is there any questions you'd like to ask? Any things you'd like to know about the stories, about the comics, about the fan fictions, about anything? Talk to me. Give me some noise to make. There's got to be more pictures in my files somewhere. We got a whole audience of 6 people. Yay! And as I was saying before, yes, I am taking. I'm shaking the coffee can. You know, shaking the tin cup. I've got to try and make some money quick because I've you know, I basically tried to pay all my bills at once, and you know, I ran out of money. I ran out of money before I ran out of bills, and I've got $46 left in one account, and I don't think it's going to cover it. So if you want a commission, if you want to buy a DVD, just go to If you want to drop something in the hat, that'd be nice too. www.rhjunior.com. Either go to www.rhjunior.com/buy to order a book or a DVD. www.rhjunior.com/commissions to order a commission. And there are links on the front page, www.rhjunior.com, so you can clicky, linky, zippity-doo-dah. Now, I don't know how many of you read how many of you read Harry Potter fan fiction. Well, however many you do, it's a depressing trend. Look this one up in TV tropes. It's Ron the Death Eater. For some reason, people have just got this visceral hatred of Ron Weasley. You know, on a first run through, Ron does have some pretty solid flaws. But you got to go back and read it again and think it over a little bit to realize that a lot of the perceptions people get of the guy are a little mistaken. Look, one of the fan people talk about how jealous he is of Harry. You know, for being rich and famous and all that other crap. And you go back and read again, there's no. He's not particularly jealous of Harry. Or envious, however you want to put it. He's not like that. What he is poor and proud. It's a source of embarrassment to him that he comes from what is relatively a very poor family. He doesn't like owing people money. He doesn't like accepting charity. And yet most of these writers will portray him as a greedy glutton. That is, you know, everybody complains. You know, everybody portrays Ron as this snorfling pig at the dinner table. You know, he's this huge glutton. And let's back up and consider that. How many brothers does he have? He has 5 brothers and 1 sister. Have you ever seen what a breakfast table, a breakfast or dinner table looks like with a family that large? You got to figure that his he's got the Weasley twins as his older brothers. These kids they're willing to experiment on him. Snatching food out of his mouth isn't much of a stretch. You got 7 kids at the table. They're gonna be grabbing for the food. I think the reason that Ron eats the way he does in the stories is because he's had to his whole life. If he didn't eat fast, the next time he looked up, there wouldn't be no seconds because everybody else would snatch it all up. And then there's they portray him. You don't get it at first. You don't get it at first when you read, for instance, the Goblet of Fire, and Ron just sort of flips out over Harry being entered, and he refuses to believe that Harry, Harry tells him, "But I didn't enter," and Ron's like, "Yeah, right," and they're both just having a huge fallout over that. Okay, you got to go back and read the first part of the story. Is that they were basically saying to each other, if either of them figured out how, they'd tell the other. If I figured out how to enter, I'd tell you. And they both agree. If they figured out. Now think about it. Think about what Harry has been doing for the past every year that Ron has known him. Harry breaks the rules and gets away with it. Their very first flying lesson, he breaks the rules. Instead of getting expelled or even getting detention, he gets to become the seeker for the Gryffindor Quidditch team, the star position. And ever since then, every year that Ron has known him, Harry will get up to his butt in trouble and come out of it smelling like a rose. So what is he supposed to think? All of a sudden, Harry, somehow, against all the rules, again, Harry is right in the middle of things again, and he's about to get fame and fortune again. How dare Ron believe what everybody else in the building believes too, My word. Oh, yeah. In the movies, he gets sidelined bad. The director they picked, after movie 2, the director they picked just got an epic load of Mary Sue fandom. He was obsessed with the character of Hermione. He gave her all of Ron's best lines, all of Ron's best moments, and turned Ron into a clown. But it goes beyond just that. I mean, still, in the books, you have to pay close attention. Everybody talks how shallow Ron is. Why? Because Hermione called him shallow. He was so mean. He said hurtful things to Hermione. No, he didn't say anything to Hermione. In the first book, he was talking to Harry. She had been nagging him in class, lecturing him about how to perform a spell, and embarrassing him in front of his classmates. Of course he snapped at her. I've said this before and I'll say it again. Hermione is the sort of kid that nobody else would want to hang out with. She wasn't portrayed even remotely correctly. I mean, even when I was reading it through the first time, I opened up the book and I got to this, and I thought she was going to be the antagonist at first, because You know, she busts in, makes rude comments to all of them, and then tries to show off for them. And I'm like, oh, you know. But everyone forgets that, you know, everybody forgets her flaws. And I just love to see somebody remember that once in a while. And everybody talks about how stupid and bigoted Ron is. Why? Because he thought the Slytherin were bad news. Oh, what a surprise. They were. And Hermione tries to start spewing, the elf welfare thing. And he's like, the elves are happy serving people. They don't like being free. And nobody can get it through her thick little skull. She's right. Everybody else in the world is wrong. Again and again, it's Ron, giving, like I said before, Ron's role was to be the native guide through the wizarding world. I think that she didn't give him enough time to do that, though. I don't think she gave him enough screen time. Rowling needed to show Ron guiding them through the pitfalls of the wizarding world more. And it should have been underlined a bit more obviously, when he was right. But moving on. What gets me is that of all the characters that they dump on, there are a lot of people they dump on Ron, they dump on Ginny. How dare she take away Hermione's boyfriend? And there are a lot who dump on Mrs. Weasley. But everybody seems to love the twins. Fred and George. Has anybody paid attention? These are two kids. They bullied their younger brother constantly. When they were younger, the reason, the canonical reason that the canonical reason that Ron is terrified of spiders is because his brothers got mad at him when they were very little, and they turned his teddy bear into a live giant tarantula right in his arms. Try that one on for size. They experimented on other kids, okay? I mean, I can't think of a worse idea than putting untested magic potions into candy. Making food products, that's on a side note, making food products, that's got to be epic level high risk right there. You're better off, but anyway, just moving on past that. They experimented on kids, and apparently they thought nothing of testing their potions on their brothers, particularly Ron. The fact that he was such a loyal, the fact that Ron came through all that and was still loving and loyal and devoted to his whole family, even the twins, speaks epic levels about his character. And when the Prisoner of Azkaban. They actually encouraged Harry to break the rules and sneak out of the castle at a time that could have gotten him killed. Fred and George were a couple of jerks. I mean, seriously, they were a couple of jerks. I've seen too many stories where they try to redeem people. You know, they try to redeem characters that are utterly irredeemable, and they do the Ron the Death Eater thing with characters, you know, who are just decent blokes. I'm rather tired of everybody talking about how poor Snape was misunderstood. You know. One, he left school and became a Death Eater. That's basically equivalent. That's the equivalent of leaving college and joining the Hitler Youth. Okay. He didn't give it. You know, and if here's a kicker for you. If it had been Neville that Voldemort had picked, Snape would still be a Death Eater. He had no problem with Voldemort's rhetoric, with all his hate spewing. He had no problem with running around through the hills torturing people and killing them and burning down their homes. He had no problem with the bigotry, you know, or any of it. The only thing that pulled him up short was that the woman he coveted was in danger. I've harped on that one for too long, but you know, everybody writes these stories about how secretly Snape was a wonderful and tragically noble, heroic figure, and then there are the ones that try to redeem. You know, the premise seems to be that if only the first conversation Harry had with, if only that first conversation Harry had with Draco had gone a little better, they would have been best friends. No. Draco didn't just make a slip in a conversation. He was a full-on nasty little piece of work right from the start. Just don't know what to think of some people. Just don't know what to think. Of course, look at me writing The Rise of Darth Vulcan, and I'm still weirded out by the fact that people are cheering him on. I'll admit, I've made him too sympathetic. He's a jerk in a lot of ways, but he's not apparently not. He apparently doesn't hit the right, the wrong key with people. That just doesn't quite strike it. I don't know what to think about that. I think it's okay. You'll all remember that big hullabaloo back when when I was doing Under the Lemon Tree, Goblin Hollow rather, and Lily smacked her sister. They were in the church parking lot, and they'd just been a big they just had a big kerfluffle with the visiting pastor, and Penny had just made a huge scene, and they were out in the parking lot, and they were trying to tell her to calm down, and she started cussing up a storm, and Lily just bap. And everybody just flew off in every direction. Yeah. Yeah, well, that's the thing of it, is that when Darth Vulcan got a hold of Diamond Tiara, you will note that all the things that he did, almost none of it was intentional. The trauma she suffered at the hands of Big Mama, the Diamond Dog matriarch, that was, it's like, oh crap, what have I done? But I put her through all that. I was trying just to make the point, just to elicit some horror and sympathy, some horror and sympathy for this for Diamond Tiara. If it had been any of the other characters, it would have been instantaneous, I think. If Apple Bloom had gone through that. If Apple Bloom had gone through that, there would have been no question, I don't think. But because it was Diamond Tiara, most of the audience was cheering him on, and I'm like, holy crap! And this is a little spoiler. His memory of that event when he dunks her in the bathtub. Is partially obscured because what really happened traumatized him so bad that he blacked it out. That's a bit of a spoiler right there. He's going to discover that a lot of his some of his memories of some of the things he's done have been, shall we say, blurred, diminished. Because they nearly pushed him over the edge. One of the things that the amulet is doing to him, though not effectively, is that it's doing its level best to keep him sane. As he noted early on in the early chapters, he should have been freaking. He should have been catatonic at this point. A normal person going through some of the things he's gone through, especially early on, should have been catatonic. And yet somehow he's holding it together, and he doesn't know how, you know, because he'll start to hit a panic attack or start to go off the rails in some other way, and suddenly his keel will level out. That's another thing. Is it that bit with the twin towns? Gave him a bit too much of a righteous villain flavor with that. I think that's what makes us all stumble. Even the worst villain thinks he has good reasons for what he does. Even the worst villain thinks he has good reasons for what he does. Oh yes, Harry Potter and the Invincible Technomage. I've been following that one. And the other one, Oh God, Not Again. I'm rereading that one. I'm curious what you all think of my other stories. Everybody's following the Warcrafter, but is anybody following Ladybird or any of the chapters in Oddments struck your fancy? Yeah, I'm working on the next chapter of that too. Again, slow going. The next chapter is her first day at Arcadia, the new school. Well, I guess I know what I'm going to be working on tomorrow. Oh, it'll be a lot better. The kids in Warcraft are basically going for their GEDs roundabout. They managed to, Taylor managed to convince her father, you know, she's basically had all the knowledge of a jeweler downloaded. She basically had, all the members of the Warcrafter team. They basically had entire trade crafts downloaded into their brain. They're a bit beyond the curve as far as high school education goes. Oh, beg your pardon. Just a matter of squeezing the juice out of the brain meats, you know what I'm saying? You know, what you were saying about too many of us could see ourselves in Darth Vulcan's position. Yeah. The same problem that I had with Penny and that little crisis incident. There's a certain ethical cognitive dissonance going on, a certain failure to translate. Now, let me explain something. People laughed. People laughed when I described Penny as troubled. Where I come from, a kid is troubled when they're in danger of wrecking their lives. Apparently, most people think that a child is quote-unquote troubled after the train wreck has already happened. They don't consider a child troubled until after she's gotten pregnant, until after she's dropped out of school, until after she started doing drugs. In a Christian household, we try and look forward and avoid falling into the trap in the first place. That's when we say, you know, the child's at risk. The child's at, you know, they start hanging out with the wrong crowd. They start doing things that, you know, they start behaving in a more risque fashion. Yeah. What I did with what's his face? Do you mean Arms Master? Lord Highly, I'm assuming you mean Arms Master. Yeah, the Ladybird and you know, Arms Master is portrayed differently. I portray him differently depending upon the circumstances. Some people interpret Arms Master as being, you know, a good guy, but just really bad with people. Now, in Ladybird, he's a good guy, but he's just really bad with people. He's more of the Vulcan Arms Master, I think of that way. He's basically autistic. He's also, if you read chapter 1, he basically admits that he's at least partially autistic. Because he basically admits that when he was a kid, he was bullied for being, well, an Asperger's. And but in Warcrafter, now he's still a good guy in Warcrafter, but he's more uptight. And Warcrafter pisses him off in ways unimaginable just for the fun of it. Running about behind him, sticking bunny ears on his helmet. Taking selfies with, tying him up in vines and then taking selfies with him. I am Wolfman, and I have just met you, but I love you. Pelting him with crab apple, just pranking him constantly. Now the main reason for that is that because canonically, Arms Master really screwed Taylor Hebert over. And every chance he got, he just epic a-hole. The first time we met, she had just defeated Lung, and he conned her into letting him take the credit for it. She didn't even get mentioned. course, it backfired on him because he didn't know that she had used brown recluse spiders and black widows to disable him. So the tranquilizer he injected into lung shut down his healing factor and made him lose his nuts. Sort of got him in trouble for that. And then, this, the entire time she was trying to go undercover. She'd been caught in a corner and mistaken for a villain, so she went undercover with the plan of finding out information about the Undersiders and turning it over to Armsmaster, and he kicked her to the curb. And then he exposed her identity during an Endbringer truce. Well, presumably he grew them back, but still, dignity. My honor has been besmirched. I really can't tell you. I really have no idea where I came up with Wonder Wars. I just, just the idea. Warcrafter, the character is the protagonist is. I'm still of two minds about calling him Warcrafter. I removed that. He's just Bayleaf now, but anyway, he's a druid. He's a World of Warcraft druid, and one of his shapes is an aquatic form that, well, basically it's a walrus. And I don't know where I came up with that. I just don't know where I came up with it and why I ran with it. It was just hilarious. Just this vision of this walrus lunging out of an alley and flattening a mugger underneath him. But no, you're saying in Darth Vulcan or in Celestia, you're used to Celestia being the wise and attentive and all-knowing and everything. That's one of the things about it, is that lately a lot of these wise, benevolent mentor characters, I think the older you get, the more cynical you get about them. Because, look at Celestia. If you look back over it canonically, back over it, it's impossible. Either you have to assume she's this all-knowing entity, which she obviously is not, or you have to assume she has been getting by, just getting her ass by on luck, and doing things that would really be unconscionable any other way, like not telling her number one pupil what the real game was, right at the first edition, the first episode. I mean, she literally had her entire world hanging by a thread of a plan. You just relied on blind luck. And it happens again and again and again and again and again. Every epic season opener or closer has been this sort of thing. You look at Yoda. Yoda seems all wise and benevolent and anything, but then you listen to some of the things he says, and you go, "What the hell are you talking about?" You know, your disciple comes to you terrified that his wife is going to die. They say, "Oh, don't worry, she'll, do not mourn for her." You know, and telling kids, to have no attachments. What the hell? I could go on for hours about the inherent flaws in the Jedi philosophy as presented. And then you have Obi-Wan. What I said was true from a certain point of view. That's Jedi for I lied my ass off, by the way. Yeah, well, don't ask me my opinion of Buddhism if you don't want to hear it. Yeah, BS. Look, I've got no use for Buddha. I'm a Baptist Christian. I don't have any use for Buddhism or Islam or any of the other isms out there. Look, first of all, it is Buddhism. The whole karma thing. If you suffer, you deserve it for some reason. And the idea that you're not supposed to have any connections, no dice. I love the idea that, we're all bound together, we're all connected, we're not supposed to have any connections. Wait, what? Anyway. It makes Westerners feel, more enlightened to blibber blabber Buddhism. Like the old saying, an expert is somebody from more than 100 miles away with a briefcase. I remember reading about Terry Pratchett. He parodied the mystic Buddha thing, the mystic mentor thing. He had people. He had these followers of I forget what her name was. The followers of this little housewife in Ankh-Morpork. She was just little old lady living by herself, clean, and young bald-headed men in robes would travel thousands of miles to sit on our front stoop and listen to her words of wisdom, which included like "bugger off and get off my porch." Yeah, I think a lot of the problems is that the people writing these supposedly wise, benevolent mentors, they aren't that wise themselves. They don't think through the implications of what they're having their wise old character do and say. I mean, the way that Dumbledore is written, you go back and analyze his behavior, he is either a criminal or a lunatic, and possibly both. You see, he's a school teacher. He's a school he's a headmaster. Where does he get off kidnapping a child and dumping it on someone's doorstep? And look at the timeline. When he he literally had Hagrid just about snatch Harry out of his godfather's arms. The person who is supposed to take care of a child when the parents die, or when calamity strikes, is the godfather. And what does he do? He keeps monsters in the school to guard some magic rock. He sends them out for detentions in the Forbidden Forest, full of giant man-eating tarantulas. Hello, could we talk this over, please? He's got several thousand counts of reckless reckless endangerment to his name just by book 3. You know, so you got to say my running gag is that I think that he is that he's tripping. He's not, you know, this is the only other theory I could come up with. You know, he's not crazy. He's not evil. He's not an evil mastermind. He's just tripping balls. And he's old enough. He could have been to the first Woodstock. You know, a little trip over to America, go on a magical mystery tour, pick up some really magic mushrooms. Little LSD in his lemon drops and a copy of The Hero with 1,000 Faces, and he's off to the races, convinced that the magic space crystal dragons have picked him to be the mentor of the next Wizarding World Savior. But and nobody's thinking through the implications of what they had Obi-Wan or Yoda say. No. That's why I went with the idea of Darth Vulcan is that she's not evil. She's not evil, but she's bought her own press. You know, she's a benevolent mother figure, and that's the problem. She's literally mothering her people to death. I think I probably should have left it. You know, that bit about the twin town. That was me railing against another story. Really, it was take that to another story, and it probably diluted the story a bit. I don't know. It was satisfying, but I don't know if it did anything great for the story. In The Rise of Darth Vulcan. I can't remember the name of the story. It was an alternate history, and the Broken Birds, in that story, they were a group of remedial flyers led by Fluttershy. And I was so mad when that story ended, because it basically happened in the same way that it portrayed it in mine. Is that they saved their town from a runaway tornado. They lost one of their friends to boot in that one, and the town thanked them by declaring them juvenile delinquents and basically enslaving them to the town, just as described. And it ended the same way, with a guy revealing their criminal status at their graduation ceremony. And it ended and even after she became one of the main six, Celestia didn't do a thing. No pardon, no justice, and the guy goes on, Karma Houdini. The whole town, a bunch of villains, who in their ingratitude, ruined a bunch of people's lives. Oh, it made me so mad. That's why I threw the guy out of a window. That's why I had them level their town and threw the guy out of a window. It really hit a note with the character of Artful Dodger. He corners the guy, and the guy's just utterly the guy's utterly unrepentant. He's just a hateful bigot, and Artful Dodger is just quivering with rage. He says, "I'm glad I was going to bring her along so she could see this, but I'm glad I didn't. She would have made me stop." A lot of my stories are in response, to others' stories. I'll admit that. My very first, I took down the fanficus crapsack stories. I look back over them, and I'm really not happy. I was just really not happy with them. But they were the first stories I wrote. They're just about the first stories I wrote, because I was so sick of skimming through film fiction, trying to find a good fan fiction to read, and it was all this same just awful crap. And that was when it wasn't just oozing perversion. And so I finally got fed up, and I wrote Fanficus Crapsack. Got so sick of people, they're all lesbians. No, jeez. I'm just tired of living. I'm just tired of a world where homosexuality is fashionable. Pardon. Excuse me. Now, people are going to give me grief about this, but look at this. Look. Better and wiser people have spelled it out more clearly than I could. If logic and reason dictate that a particular behavior is harmful mentally, physically, emotionally, then logic and morals and reason should dictate that behavior is unacceptable. And I could spend days just listing down the evidences that the homosexual lifestyle is psychologically and physically destructive to human beings. It should not be, look, but I feel so much desire for, and they talk about their physical desires for like it's, look, we all have physical desires. It's documented as old as humanity, that we have known since the dawn of time that human beings have desires, impulses, urges, lust, wrath, sloth, gluttony. Shall we continue? That we are expected as civilized beings to restrain, control, or abjure. It is the fundamental requirement of being a human being. Simply because something is pleasurable does not make it automatically good. To say that we are incapable of controlling our sexual behavior is to lower ourselves below the level of an animal. Oh man, the hermaphrodite thing. Real life hermaphrodites are a tragedy. They're people with an incredible biological difficulty. Real life hermaphrodites are people in one of a dozen different ways where the physical development of their reproductive systems has gone haywire. I don't even want to speculate about what kind of medical issues that they suffer. The people that treat it like a fetish are idiots. Look, you're not going to get homosexual activity following the same rules as heterosexual activity. You know why? Because homosexuality is about transgressing in the first place. Once you cross one line, why should you feel obligated to stay behind any other? Oh, that's true. Homosexual relationships do have higher rates of physical and emotional abuse. They also have a higher rate of dissolution. Even a supposedly monogamous homosexual will go through relationships like most people go through tissues. Yes, and I'm sure that there are exceptions to the rule, but they're exceptions. They're not the rule. It's just, you know, this is a topic that you could take all day. And those that advocate for homosexuality in our society are not going to listen to any arguments to the contrary. Because the very idea that somebody with homosexual urges should suppress those urges and ignore them and not be driven by their, driven around by their hormonal desires is anathema to our society. It's a lost world. It's a lost world. And once the influence of Christianity has been pushed aside, once the influence of God's Word has been pushed aside, it's a race to the bottom. And it's very, very hard not to be pulled along with it. Yeah, that's the Your Character Here auctions are the latest craze among people trying to make some cash, and especially in the furry community. You give your character description. They have a crude outline, real rough pencil outline of some pose or some scenario, and your character here, and you can plunk down cash and have your character drawn in that place. And most of them are porn. What can you do? You know, you can't do anything. That's life. It's kind of sad what happened to the furry community. It reconnected almost immediately. This new OBS is a real good program. I'm impressed. Much easier to use. But, oh my. I don't know what to think. I don't know what to think. I don't know what to say. Every day we stray a little further from God. What are you gonna do? You know, what can you do? What can you do? What should you do? Well, like I was saying, the furry community, it used to be about people who just like anthropomorphics, you know, talking animals, funny animal characters. And it's unsurprising that it was such a large community. Because, I mean, we've all been raised on everything from Disney to Hanna-Barbera to Warner Brothers. Talking animal characters have been part of our culture for hundreds of years. Part of our fantasy, sci-fi, children's entertainment, everything from higher to children's serial. So, unfortunately, you had a bunch of people that jumped on the bandwagon. We're screaming freaks. That's a good way of putting it. The internet is a brute force multiplier for everything, including the worst parts of humanity. Yeah. You have to take the good with the bad, I suppose. Fandoms are freak magnets. You get a bunch of people who have been fairly isolated and loners, and then they find a group of people that have something in common. They go, "Oh, let's all get together," and they make a fandom. And then you get then the next group comes along, and it's more about them being isolated and well, let's put it this way: freaks see fandoms as a sanctuary for their freakishness, at the expense of everybody else there. It's a commonality with every fandom, whether you're talking the bronies, the furries, the Trekkies, what do you call Star Wars fans? Sad, tragic, and out of luck. But sci-fi fans, whether you're talking, any fandom. It's people trying to make a niche for themselves, and when a niche is made, others come along to exploit it. Well, okay, it is 2:30 in the morning, and it's been about 3 hours I've been going at this. I think I'm going to go ahead and call it a quits for the night. And like I was saying before, I'm shaking the tin cup. I'm taking as many commissions as I can and asking for donations and pledges and everything I can think of, because I really need money right now, and I'm in a bit of a financial pinch, and I'd like to get it corrected before my bank account gets imploded. So if you stop on my site, www.rhjunior.com, feel free to drop something in the hat. Well, I'll try and do this more often. I'll try and do some more art. I'm going to be spending tomorrow. I'm going to be trying to finish up those next 2 chapters of Lady Bird and the Warcrafter. And I think I'm just going to spend tomorrow working on all the different stories I've got. I've got half chapters for almost everything. But I'll catch you again. Y'all have yourselves a good night.